Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Taylor and today is my October reading wrap up. So I read 21 books in the month of October, which is the most books that I have read all year. It was pretty crazy. I have just been reading. That's kind of just all I've been doing. I have been like looking at things on YouTube and I'm just like, nothing's really like striking my fancy. So I have just been popping in my earbuds or just sitting on this love seat and reading. If you're interested in learning about all the books that I read in the month of October, don't forget to give this video a like. Please subscribe to the channel. I have a lot of really fun crafting vlogs that are going to be coming up for the holiday season. I'm really excited to dive into gift making this year, and for the first kind of time I'm going to be making gifts that aren't exclusively crochet items, and I'm really excited to take you guys along with me. So with all that out of the way, let's hop in. I read 7,938 pages. I read 4 romance, 4 manga / graphic novels, 2 young adult, 2 literary fiction, 4 fantasy, 3 nonfiction, and 2 classics. That's kind of what we got going on for the stats. And I listened to a lot of these books on audio. Some of them are very, very long. So the first book that I listened to was Pucking Strong, which is the 4th book in the Jacksonville Rays hockey series by Emily Rath. This is following Teddy and Henrik, and it is, if we're gonna like go by tropes, it is a queer romance, 2 men, and it is a guardianship kind of single parent / marriage of convenience, which you didn't think you could do marriage of convenience with queer people, did you? Really threw a curveball. I loved the relationship between these two. I thought it was very wholesome, very kind of like slow burn, realizing your sexuality and coming into the responsibilities of being a permanent guardian / parental figure. I thought it was a good time. I really like Emily Rath's romances. I think that although they are kind of more considered that like erotica on that spectrum, I think that she does such a good job at character work. That is why I keep going back to her novels. Like, it's not even like I am a huge romance reader to begin with. Even though it's one of my most read genres, I feel like I don't read a ton of romance, but that's a conversation for another time. But I think that Emily Rath is one of my favorite authors when it comes to creating compelling characters that don't feel super cut and paste. So even though we've been, following all these different gentlemen on the hockey team, I do feel like they are different enough and they all have these different personalities, and I like how POC representation and just different sorts of queer, because it's not just straight or gay, there's also bisexuality representation and demisexual and all these different things, and I just think that that's really cool to see in our romance novels that we don't have all the time. Next is Parasite Volume 1 by Hitoshi Iwaki. And this is a manga that's about an alien that comes in and infects our main character's hand, and essentially it is the relationship that him and his now kind of sentient hand have. Basically, it's like this alien race is coming in and it was supposed to try and get into the brains of humans, and then they can control the human body, i.e. parasites, but the alien that got into his hand wasn't able to get to his brain, so he just like inhabits his hand and kind of has a mind of its own. It was interesting. I had thought about potentially purchasing this book from a local manga shop, and I decided not to because I was able to check it out from my library. I don't think I would move forward with this manga series. I just didn't find it compelling enough for myself. I'm glad that I read it. I'm glad that, you know, I sated my curiosity. That if you're really into like sci-fi stuff, or if you really like action mangas, this might be more for you. It's just not entirely to my taste. So next is The Remarkable Journey of Coyote Sunrise by Dan Gaiman Hart. So this book is the extemporaneous reading prose book for Minnesota speech this year. This is the new book that they have. Most of the time they keep a book for like 2-ish years. So this year they're doing the first half of the book. Next year they're gonna do the second half of the book. This is a young adult or like kind of middle grade fiction book about a girl who's around 12 years old named Coyote. And her and her dad Rodeo live on a converted school bus and they just drive around the country. And a big portion of this book is exploring the grief that Coyote is going through about losing her sisters and her mother. And in doing that, you know, also helping her dad process his grief. And they are on this cross-country road trip to get back to their hometown because she needs to get something from her hometown. And along the way, they pick up all these different kind of family members, we can say. We have, not like family members, but like friends. They pick up these like hitchhikers who become friends and family in their own right. The voice of this book is so distinct. I feel like the way that Coyote, our young girl, the way that she talks, I feel like the author really did a good job of creating a really strong voice in this young girl. And it was so beautiful, and it did make me cry at the end. It was a very fun story with very fun, distinctive characters. So I'm excited to see how students perform this, and honestly it's making me want to see if I can have a student be an extemporaneous reading this year so that I can, you know, work with this more. Obviously if no one's interested, I'm not going to force anyone, but I think that it was definitely a very good choice for an extemporaneous reading prose book. Next is We Love You, Bunny by Mona Awad. This is a sequel slash prequel to Bunny by Mona Awad. Bunny was one of my favorite books of last year. I just think that Mona Awad is such a good writer. I love her prose style. And in this, so if you know Bunny, it's more of like a campus novel. You know, we have our main character Samantha, and she kind of joins the popular girls group for a bit, and you know, chaos ensues. It's a little bit like spooky horror, very good time of the year to read Bunny if you haven't read it. But We Love You, Bunny follows the girls of the popular group that Samantha joins. And so they essentially have kidnapped Samantha, and they're like, hey, we don't like what you wrote in your book. So we're actually going to tell you exactly what happened because you don't have the story straight. And it follows the 4 girls who were in like the bunny clique and a little bit more of the paranormal aspects of the college that they were going to. It's so interesting how much deeper we get into it. I do think that this book was a little bit long for what it was. It feels like it takes like this very sharp turn in the middle and you're like, whoa, what are we... I did feel a little bit confused by that turn. It does wrap up pretty nicely. I think if you liked Bunny, I recommend maybe like checking this out of the library. The audiobook for this was super, super good. It was very fun to listen to in an audiobook format. If you read Bunny, if you liked Bunny, I do recommend checking it out. I wouldn't have the highest of expectations though. I guess based on the synopsis, my expectations were different than what was delivered. That's just my opinion. Next is Old Time Religion by E.H. Lupton. This is the second book in the Wisconsin Gothic series. I just love Ulysses and Sam. I think that they are such fun, compelling characters. I think that they are really cute together as a couple. They have a few miscommunication problems, but that's what helps drive stories. That's the funny part about like miscommunication in novels. It's like you have to somehow drive things forward, and if everyone was a well-adjusted person who just talked to people, we wouldn't have novels, right? So in this book, Ulysses's ex-girlfriend Livia comes back from Chicago And we find out a little bit of the backstory. She like dumped Ulysses and hightailed it to Chicago. And then she got married like right away. And something very mysterious happened to her husband. She is not sure what happened. She's like, Ulysses, you work with paranormal stuff. Help me please. And Ulysses is like, sure, I'll help you. I'll help you try and figure it out. And Sam's like, you shouldn't help her. She was actually like really rude to you. She was like really, really mean to you. You don't need to help her. And Ulysses is like, but I feel like I should. All while Ulysses is ramping up to defend his thesis statement. So I love the setting of this. I will say the time that this takes place is around spring, summertime. So I thought I was going to get more fall vibes. I didn't. That's okay. I am excited to read the third book in this series. Just continue Ulysses and Sam's story. Next is The Power Worshippers: Inside the Dangerous Rise of Religious Nationalism by Katherine Stewart. I listened to this on audio, and it's really difficult to learn so much about Christian nationalism and the new right and the ways in which New Age conservatives really ramp people up using their fears. I liked this book. It was a difficult read, and one thing that's hard too about I read another book by Katherine Stewart this month, and I guess I'll talk about it now. I read Money, Lies, and God, also by Katherine Stewart. And one thing that is difficult for me with Katherine Stewart's writing is she names a person and everything they've done, and it kind of feels like paragraph after paragraph of just that, and it makes it hard for me to comprehend like everything that's going on, because she is talking about so many different people. And they are all important. They are all tied to huge organizations that are basically siphoning money from the government and our taxpayer dollars to push a super conservative narrative. It just makes it for a hard reading experience, in my opinion. Both of these books were very good. I am glad that I read them. I do recommend, if you are interested in learning about the like religious right or like Christian nationalism and their rise, I do recommend reading one or both of these books. Both of them were a little bit, I don't think you need to read both of them. Certainly not both of them in the same month. I do recommend like start with The Power Worshippers. I think The Power Worshippers were really good, and then maybe like pick up Money, Lies, and God like a few months afterwards for a refresher. But I feel like it was like so much of the same information in my brain in 1 month, and it just kind of like it just got to me a bit. A Short History of Drunkenness by Mark Forsyth. How, why, where, and when humankind has gotten merry from the Stone Age to the present. This was exactly what I needed after reading so many very intense nonfiction over the past, couple months. This book was so much fun. I am so glad I read it. I've had it in my collection for a couple years now. And just this tiny, slender little guy, and I feel like I learned so much on it. Some of the chapters include like the prehistory of drinking, the Dark Ages, the Roman Convenium, the Greek Symposium, just different ways in which humanity has gotten drunk. And it's not so much about like how we made alcohol, or it's about the consumption and the behaviors around the consumption of alcohol. And it's really cool. Did you know that tavern owners used to be primarily women because brewing was a thing you could do in the kitchen while watching children? And that's one thing I learned in another book that I was reading called Women's Work, that women took to the fiber arts because it was something that they could do while watching children. You could put it down, go tend to the children, and then come back to it, which makes a lot of sense when you think about how like brewing beer in particular couldn't be done in a kitchen when you have children, entertaining themselves on the floor, you know what I mean? And I just want to read you one quote. In Sumerian bars in ancient Mesopotamia, the Sumerian proverb, "He is fearful, like a man unacquainted with beer." And then another one was, "Not to know beer is not normal." So I'm not a big beer drinker, but I just thought that those were so fun. Next, I read Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. And I know that people are very polarized on this. I also feel very conflicted about this. I will say I've thought about this book a lot since finishing it. So I will say it left a lasting impact on me. Whether that's good or bad, I'm not quite sure. So the premise of this is we have two grad students who are going to hell to get their graduate professor back because they are both about to defend their theses, and they think that he is the only one who is going to be able to help them graduate on time and get jobs. So we have Alice Law and Peter Murdoch. The book is primarily told through Alice's eyes. And Alice is so insufferable. She is super delusional and I really like her. Peter Murdoch, If you are going into this wanting a grad student romance, you're going to be sorely disappointed. The romance is so, it's like not even, it's not the A plot for sure. It's not the B plot. It's like C-D plot. There's a lot of things going on in this book. There's a lot of dense dialogue, I would say, because you have two very smart grad students. R.F. Kuang is clearly a very smart individual and she kind of lays it all out there in this book. The beginning and the ending were really strong. I do think that some of the plot points in the middle kind of sagged a little bit, but overall, you know, this book makes you think. This book is quite fun. It makes you think about sins because they're basically going through the 7 circles of hell in a way trying to look for this professor, and they are not having a very good time doing it. I saw another creator who reads more of R.F. Kuang's writing. She was like, I wouldn't recommend reading this for first R.F. Kuang, and I was like, oh, well, here we are. But she had a lot of really good points about the educational aspect of it and the way these characters are acting. And I thought that it was just like a very complex novel. If you are interested, I would recommend picking it up. I think the big thing about books in general, I have a hard time with book talk or just like book content on like Instagram because people are like, I loved this book, it's the best book ever. And while that might be true for them, I think the hyperbole of it all makes it a little bit more difficult when lay people or like, you know, their viewers read this book and they're like, I didn't love this, or, you know, this didn't irrevocably change me like it changed you. I think especially when you are wanting to intake content like that, you have to make sure that you keep your expectations of what you like in check. And the more you read, the more you'll understand what you do and don't like, or, you know, have a better understanding of even just reading the synopsis of a book of like, oh yeah, like I could see myself liking something like this. The next one was Mimosa by Archie Bongiovanni, and this is about a group of queer people in their 30s trying to make connections. I had a tough time with this one. So this friend group, they're all in their 30s and they're like, oh my gosh, we feel like we are aging out of the queer community, but, you know, queer elders still exist. Or, you know, as we get older, we have this new group of queer elders that haven't existed in the past because of the AIDS epidemic. And so what they decide to do is they do this like 30 and up mixer night specifically for queer people. And it's really cool. I like that aspect of it. But throughout that, their relationships get very strained with each other. So, for example, one of the characters has a child and they are actively co-parenting. And they complain about co-parenting, they complain about how they can't get laid. Then when they're out at this mixer night, they get all upset because they don't get laid because they cheated on their ex-partner, and people in the queer community know that. And so they're like, I don't want to be with someone who cheated on their last partner. And then they go to their friends and they're like, well, I didn't get laid and I'm really upset with you guys. Why does nobody care? And they're like, sorry? I picked up this book because I had actually thought about purchasing it at Half Price Books, and I found it at my library. So thankfully I was able to check this book out of my library. I just have a really hard time when there are parents in books that then complain about being a parent. Like, there is a significant plot line of this same person who is like parenting, cheated on their ex-partner, where they are like, sometimes I wish I didn't have a kid, and then they go and tell that to their child. And as someone who like kind of had an experience with a parent like that, it's not something you just can forget or brush off or really like move forward from. I was just very not impressed with that, and I'm also not a parent, so I don't know what that feels like, but I guess just like it just was really odd. I was having a really hard time like connecting with this. Overall, I'm glad I read it, but I'm also glad that I didn't purchase it because I know it would be like I read it and then I would get rid of it. Next is Paradise Lost by John Milton. Who's sick of me talking about this book? Myself, a little bit. So Paradise Lost is an epic poem that was written in 1667. So this book, this epic poem is old, and it can be very difficult to understand what is going on. So there are 12 books in this, you know, story. Most of it is told from the point of view of Satan after him and his ilk of people who defied God were cast out. And the prose in this book, or like the writing, is so beautiful. My favorite book was book 7, which was, so we have a lot of it told by Satan, but then around books 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, we have Raphael talking to Adam about how God created man and the world, and about him creating Adam and Eve, and you know, we get a little bit of like Adam and Eve talking together and their life and what it looks like in the Garden of Eden. So interesting because the story of creation in Genesis isn't super long. It's very much like God did this and it was good, you know? And I thought that this is such a good interpretation. I thought it was really interesting. I think getting into the head of, you know, a battle in heaven and Satan and his ilk being cast out, and the first sin and the shame and guilt, the way that these things are explored is so interesting. One of my favorite things in this book, actually, after, spoiler alert, Eve eats the apple. I know that historically it's considered more like a pomegranate, and here it's an apple. And then she's like, Adam, eat with me. They do. They go to bed. And then the day after, he's like, I can't believe you made me do that, woman. Why would you do that? And she went, if I'm so bad, why'd you follow me? And for what? Like, he was like, I can't believe that you would make me do that. And she's like, I didn't make you do anything. They like separate to go do their daily chores, and he was like, no, like, don't do that. And she was like, nah, I'll be fine. And so he let her go. He's like, and she's like, if I'm so bad, you should have forbidden me to go alone. You shouldn't have left me alone. And that's on that. I thought that this was really I thought it was really good. I definitely will reread this at some point in my life. Definitely want to return to portions of it. Is it perfect? No, not by any means. But it was definitely worth the read. I am glad that I took my time with this. I actually checked out the audiobook from my library, and I would listen to it and follow along in the text. So that's how I was able to read this. I read it very slowly, and I really feel like I was able to absorb what was going on, which was really nice. Next was Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. This book was super forgettable for me. I do consider this a romance. It was kind of considered horror. The horror is like a B plot. So essentially we have Nena and Nestor, and it's basically about them falling in love. They were childhood sweethearts, and then Nena got attacked by a vampire. At the time, they don't know that it's a vampire. They're very confused. They were like 14 years old, and so Nestor runs away because he's like, oh my god, I killed the girl I love, or like, you know, was a bystander in her dying. So he runs away. And then the Anglicans, white people, are coming in, and they're trying to overtake the Mexican territory. And so they go to war, or not, they go to battle. Nena goes with to nurse the soldiers, and Nestor comes back to help defend his homeland. And so it's them kind of getting back together, and then the vampires are coming in. I thought this book was fun. I thought it was cute. Actually, a super short read if you're interested in something like a little bit spooky. If you're not super into horror, I think something like this would be a good maybe like starting point, or like just the right amount of horror. I did not find this scary. There were a few like descriptions that made my stomach churn, you know, because when you have vampires, you do have a certain sort of like body things that go on. But overall, I thought that it was fine. I thought that it was cute and a fun time, but overall not entirely memorable for me. Next was A Gentleman in Moscow. Talk about a memorable novel. Oh my god, I loved this book so much. It's by Amor Towles. We are following Count Alexander, and he is put on house arrest for writing a poem in Russia. And so he had maintained a permanent residence at the Metropole Hotel in the middle of Moscow. He is sentenced to spend his life there. They are like, you can walk around the hotel, but you cannot step one toe out of the hotel. And it's about the friends that he makes and the beautiful life that he lives living in this hotel and the connections that he makes. Like, this book has so many wonderful male friendships and, you know, men that check up on each other and love each other openly. And I think that this is such a good work of art. Like, when people say like, this is what reading is, this book is the reason why. It's books like this that are the reason we read. It was so wonderful, so beautiful. It is a slow-paced book. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, this book is slow. Really, just take your time with it. Let it wash over you. And I think that this book would be a really good sort of like fall winter read. I don't feel like, you know how some people are like, oh, you know, you don't have to mix your genres with the seasons. I do think that there is some merit to it though. Like, in the summer, you want to just read a fun little boppy romance. In the wintertime, you want to read about dragons and all this stuff because life is slower and you want to take your time. This is a book where you want to take your time. And I implore you, if you don't want to read anything else today that I talk about, please read this book. It is so, so, so good. Next is The Name She Gave Me by Betty Cully. This is a novel in verse, and this is the Minnesota Extemporaneous Reading poetry book. So this is the second year that they are using it. So next year they are going to be choosing a new title. This follows Rin, who lives on a garlic farm. She was adopted as a baby, and her adoptive parents changed her name. So this book is a lot about her experience in her adopted family and her journey to find out who her biological family was. I thought that this book was really sweet, very heartwarming, especially when it comes to sibling love and first loves and just trying to kind of figure it out. I will say this was a super easy read if you are wanting to get into poetry, or you have middle school and up child who is interested in poetry. I do think that something like this would be really interesting. I will say I've seen students perform this before. I'm interested to see what they do with the second half. The second half of this book is definitely more intense than the first half, so I'm interested to see more students perform with this. Next is Hera by Jennifer Saint, and I have read, I think, all of Jennifer Saint's books that she has written so far, and all of them I've really, really enjoyed. I both loved and hated this book, and I don't know how to truly explain that. So obviously Hera is the wife of Zeus in Greek mythology. This follows from the point that the Titan War ends. The Greek gods kind of come into power until the end of Greek power, which is really interesting. It spans hundreds and hundreds of years. And one thing that I think is really difficult that I wish would have been explored more, because so Zeus creates humans to be kind of his little playthings, and Hera has such disdain for them. Even though, you know, women are constantly praying to her for good marriages, for fertility, for all these things that she is supposed to be the goddess of. And she's like, well, I have nothing and I'm supposed to be the most powerful and I have no power. And she never truly realizes the power that she could have. The thing that she really like kind of withholds is like marriage blessings, but people can get married without her blessing. You know what I mean? I liked some parts of this, but on the whole, I just wasn't as interested in it as I thought I would be. It's hard when you have an idea of what Greek mythology is, and, you know, a lot of people think of Hera as a bitter wife and all this stuff. And honestly, like, valid. It's not fair the way that she is like kind of forced into this marriage and then has to be kind of like run around on all the time. Like, that's no fun. But then all she does is focus on these little petty things. It's very interesting. I'm not saying I don't recommend it. Like, read this book. It's very interesting. Of all the books that Jennifer Saint has read, this one would probably rank in the middle for me. Next is 7 X's by Lucy Vine. And honestly, this book kind of disappointed me. I'm not gonna lie. So we have Esther, who is like, oh my god, I need to find the love of my life. I'm turning 29 and things are just not going great for me. So what she does is she dredges up her entire past, the past like 7 exes that she has, and she essentially tries to force herself to love somebody who she doesn't love. On the whole, so this book I actually bought in the fiction section of Barnes & Noble, but I would call this a romance book. Like, she is trying, I think it also read kind of like a movie script. Like, this book would make like a compelling movie or like a limited series, but in book form, it just felt so drawn out. I don't feel like I got enough of what I wanted for, you know, how long this was, which was like almost 400 pages. This book is also so funnily British. There's so much British slang in here. I do think I am going to unhaul this book, not because I didn't like it, but because I'm not going to return to it. And that's not, you know, I don't think that that has any bearing on the book in particular. I do think that this story is for somebody, and that on the whole, it's an easily likable story. Like, really nothing wrong with it, but I am going to pass this along. Next is Stung with Love, Poems and Fragments by Sappho. This is only about 90 pages. And I loved this. I thought these were so good. I actually read this like pretty soon after I read Hera. It was actually so nice to just like kind of continue with the Greek mythology thing. Just such beautiful little fragments of poetry. And the nice thing about this is that it gives context for the poem on the left side, and then on the right side is the fragment. So what I did to read this was I would read it and I'd be like, okay, you know, and then I would read the context of it and I'd be like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. And then I would read it again. And that was a way for me to understand what I was reading more. Something like this, you could easily just only read the fragments and not get any of the context. I definitely want to read more of Sappho. I was under the impression when reading like the introduction of this that I'm like, this can't be all that survived by this woman if she was so popular. Yeah, no, there are multiple other books of Sappho's poetry, so I definitely want to read more of Sappho. Next is Frankenstein by Junji Ito. So this is a short story collection by him, but the first part of it, like a majority of this book, is a graphic or like a manga telling of Frankenstein. And I thought it was really good. I'm pretty sure he like won an award for his retelling of Frankenstein. I have read Frankenstein. I'm definitely due for a reread, but I do feel like it was true to the original of what I remember, because like I said, it's been a while. And then the rest of the stories were so cool because they were all interconnected. So it was like this parallel dimension thing. So we have our one character and we just have multiple stories of these parallel dimensions going on with him. And it was really, really, really good because I like was trying to keep up and like, what's going on? What's going on? So I definitely, this and then like the 2 volumes of the Liminal Zone. When it comes to Junji Ito short stories, creme de la creme. For sure. I loved this one. Next is Covet by Tracy Wolff. So this is the 3rd book in the Crave series, so I don't have a ton to say about this. One thing I will say is I cannot help but love these characters. I keep thinking like, gosh, you know, I have a hard time with the writing style of Tracy Wolff, but I think that she does such a good job of telling the story in a fun way. I do think that she's a little bit wordy. So it's told from the point of view of our main girl, Grace, who is 17 years old, and she's just a bit dramatic. And honestly, what teenager isn't a little bit dramatic? I think that this is just a really fun book, and I'm excited to continue the story and finish it because I never finished the last 2 books. Okay, only 2 left. I know I've been talking for a while. So next was Junji Ito's Cat Diary. This was so cute, really, really short, and I think that it was a very fun depiction of Junji Ito's cats. It's essentially how he fell in love with being a cat dad. So we have Yun and Mew. Yun was his first cat. It was his wife's cat, and when they moved in together, Yun came with his fiance, then wife, and then they adopted Mew together so that Yun would have a playmate. And just the shenanigans that they get into is so funny, and I love how Junji Ito, takes his horror aspects and then applies some of them to his wife. It's so funny because his wife, the way he depicts her is like kind of crazy cat lady. Like she's got no pupils, just like this Cheshire cat grin. Just really fun. If you are looking for something just like really short, really quick, just a good time, I do recommend. I checked this out from my library. I thought it was really, really cute. And then the last book that I read in the month of October was The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Lori Gilmore. Oh my god, I finally read this book. So this is a fluffy, cozy, autumnal romance. This book gets so polarizing. You know, when I was talking about expectations, I think people expect too much out of this book. You know, it's an it's a seasonal romance. And I don't think that seasonal romances are meant to be our favorite books of all time. They are not the pinnacle of literature. But that doesn't mean that you can't have a good time. One thing too, I think about this book, a lot of people were like, oh my god, it's Lorelai and Luke. And I have watched about 4 seasons of Gilmore Girls, and I saw fragments of characters. I definitely saw more of like Stars Hollow and the quirky mayor. I saw those aspects. I think when it came to the characters, I think they stood on their own a little bit more because it's just like Lorelai is a frazzled woman. Love her. I love Lorelai. I do. That's not a dig. But then we have our main character, Jeannie, in this book. Jeannie has quite a bit of anxiety and, you know, she just seems a little bit more shy. It's not the same. It's not the same. And then we have Logan, who is supposed to be our grumpy, who is a farmer, but he also like loves his family and has this thriving community of friends and, you know, is working towards being a better man. Whereas I feel like when we think about Luke from Gilmore Girls, I'm like, he just is a grumpy man who doesn't really want to care about people. So I do, maybe I'm misguided and I haven't watched all of Gilmore Girls. I understand the parallels, but I do think that this book stands on its own. I thought it was really fun. I just kind of took my time with it and really let myself be cozy and be in the moment and, you know, in it when I was in it. Was it revolutionary? No. And I think that kind of harkens back to what I was saying about like managing expectations of our books, but then also I think on like book creators, not everything can be your favorite book. And that's a broader conversation to have about influencer culture and like, this is the best ever and like, I'm obsessed, run to wherever, you know. I thought it was fun. I got the first 3 books for like $10 on my Kindle, so like that's why I'm holding up my Kindle, is that's where I read it. I do plan on reading the Cinnamon Bun Bookstore, which I have heard is not as good as the first one, but I do have, was it The Christmas Tree Farm, which is the 3rd one. I really want to read that during Christmas. Like, and it's so hard because the covers of these books are so cute. Like, normally, like those cozy little covers, they don't get me as much. No, these got me. I mean, I'm glad I don't own physical copies because I don't feel like I would keep them. But oh my god, they are so cute. Maybe if I found them at the thrift store, I would buy them and then like have them to display. Oh my goodness. How you doing? How's everyone doing? That was so much. I have been trying to think more about the books that I'm reading, less. I don't want to tell you guys summaries of the books that I'm reading. I want to tell you, summaries are for TBRs. I want to tell you how these books made me feel, what I thought of them. Yeah, I think I'm gonna leave you guys with that. Let me know what you read in the month of October. I would love to know. And don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more crazy reading months like this. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!